Good morning, everyone. How are you? So glad to be here today for today's Coffee Time Career Chat. So, if you are joining us for the very first time, my name is Patricia Hayes, and I am your executive advisor, career empowerment coach, and authentic networking strategist. And that means that I love to help people to fully utilize their professional relationships and their network so that they can achieve their career and business goals. And we do that by really digging deep on who you know, how you know them, and how you can connect and reconnect in a very authentic and purposeful way that will help to move your goals forward and theirs as well, most of the time. So, speaking of reconnecting, that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get there, let's say happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Hope you are going to have a fantastic day and that you get to share the love with folks around you in one way or another. We've been talking about sharing the love with your network all month long, and I'm looking forward to continuing that for the next couple of weeks. And so look forward to that. Also, if you are still looking for a way to do the whole reconnecting thing and networking, and you're not quite sure how, I highly encourage you to go check out my 30-day consistency challenge, the Authentic Networking Edition. I'll drop the link in the comments below. But you can start it any day, anytime, because it's never too late to start working on reestablishing your professional relationships, right? And so it's a really simple way to be able to do it, to build some consistency, to build some accountability so that you can get that momentum going with your professional relationships once again, and or to up level them to a new level. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to hit me up in the DMs, in the messages, in the comments, and I'll be happy to follow up with you. But I highly recommend it for you because it is about to be conference season, and we want to make sure that we are fully prepared by making sure we're already connecting with or know how to connect with our relationships professionally. Okay. So there we are. Today, we are talking about 3 strategies to overcoming your reconnection fears. And this is something that's super, it's something that comes up all the time, right, for people. And a lot of times it doesn't get words added to it because folks are just like, oh, there's an excuse behind it, right? Like, I don't have time. People don't have time. It takes too much. It's fake, all of these things. When in reality, our real concern is probably we have a fear about reaching out and connecting with people, especially if we haven't had a connection with them in more recent times. So, we're going to talk about how to do that. And quite frankly, we're talking about specifically overcoming those fears as you're reconnecting, but it works for connecting as well, right? The fears are generally about the same. It's just a question of how it's applying in a particular romance. So here we go. First thing, let's talk about what the fears are before we talk about the strategies to overcoming them. So I just, there are tons of reasons. I just labeled the top 3 that most of the time that come up for people when they are really trying to figure out what in the world they're doing and saying why they can't do it. And the first one is worthiness. Like they don't feel like they're worthy enough to even be in conversation with this particular person or a group of people. I feel like, you don't come up to standards for whatever reason. Maybe it's your level of expertise, maybe it's economics, maybe it's just friend groups and things like that. But for whatever reason, we don't feel like, or you don't feel like you're worthy enough to be able to reach back out to these people in order to reestablish or establish that connection. And, it's really, really common because most of the time the worthiness issue comes up. It's an imposter syndrome situation, right? It's really about, just feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough. They're too good for me. I mean, whatever. Flip it however you want to. It's really about imposter syndrome. And those are some limiting beliefs. All of these are limiting beliefs about why we don't connect and why we don't do several other things. So that's a different conversation to really dig deep into that, but recognize it for what it is and basically call it out. It's not true, right? It's not true that you're not worthy. There may be differences, but quite frankly, a lot of the times, the differences are what really make the relationships and the connections special. And I talk about that all the time about how there are times when I'm dealing with people, the people are like, how do you even know that person? Or how did you come to know them? And most of the time, it's a really unusual situation, or it was some connection that didn't seem like it made sense. But as time progressed, it does, right? So don't be thrown off by, I won't even say inconsistencies, but, differences in quote levels from a social perspective, from an expertise perspective, right? Don't let those things limit your ability to reach out and to connect with people. The second one is really easily affiliated with worthiness, right? And it's insufficiency. So you're thinking that you're insufficient in some way. You don't have enough experience, you don't have enough money. There's something about the relationship, the connection that makes you feel like you're insufficient and what you bring to the table is not enough in order to justify making the connection, trying to make the relationship work. Again, another limiting a belief that is often not true. It is and can be true that there are differences in experience levels and that there are differences in social economic levels and all of those other things. But it doesn't mean that that is a reason that justifies not reaching out to someone. A lot of times when you hear these great stories from quote famous people or really successful people, they did something along the way that other people looking at them thought they were crazy. I'm like, who do you think you are reaching out to this person or talking to that person, right? There's always that point where you have to overcome that fear, that limiting belief in order to get to what you want. And that's what we're talking about here today. The third fear that I hear the most often, and it probably is the most common one, is a fear of rejection, right? That you're going to reach out, that someone's not going to return the call, they're not going to respond to the email, that there's going to be some form of no involved. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth in one of the points here. But again, remember that rejection is normal. It's par for the course. People saying no, not yet, it happens. And depending on the context of it, just remember it to not take it personally. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Okay. So let's see, make sure we check in our comments here. If you are on LinkedIn, I did see a note that there were some problems with seeing LinkedIn comments today. So I'm not ignoring you. There's some technical glitch between the two platforms. So I will follow or respond afterwards if for some reason I missed someone here today. Okay. All right. So let's start talking about those 3 strategies to overcoming those reconnection fears. Okay. The first one, authenticity and vulnerability is key. Bottom line, if you want to be able to overcome those fears, those limiting beliefs, so that you can stretch, because it is a stretch, and connect to the people, reconnect to the people that you need to in your professional network, you got to be authentic and you got to be willing to share a little bit, right? It doesn't mean you got to tell all your business or whatever. People kind of say, like, oh, I'm a private person. Well, during these last few years, everything is kind of laid bare for most of us. So that privacy piece is like, yes, you still need to maintain your boundaries. I'm a huge advocate for that. However, there needs to be a little flexibility, a little give, and a little willingness to share with other people so that you can make that human connection. That's really what we're talking about. So you want to be real. Be real. If you did not continue connecting with someone because a personal matter came up in your family that you had to tend to, say that. You don't have to say exactly what the situation was, but you can just say, I had some personal things to come up that required me to redirect my efforts, and so I'm just getting back into the swing of things. And I really want to, get back on your schedule, have a chit chat, whatever it may be. All right, be honest. Again, very connected. Be honest. Don't make up some fake story. Don't make up some fake crises. Things happen. I mean, earlier this month, oh my gosh, I was just horrified because it was earlier this month or end of last month, whatever. In recent weeks, I was in the midst of some serious reconnecting for the beginning of the year, right? Had sent out a big email, had made several personal touches and outreaches to some people that I've been really wanting to talk to and work with. And then my email goes down. I have a whole issue with my email provider and server, something I did not realize was happening. And I freaked out and I was like, oh my gosh. And so there I was with things. And then on top of that, some other scheduling thing going on, some glitch within my calendar, right? Not an excuse, like a real thing. It was a real thing. And I'm just like, what in the world? And I'm convinced there are a couple of people I haven't followed up with even today because I haven't been able to figure out who I did get back to or who I didn't, right? So this is this ongoing thing. But here's what's going to happen and what I've already done. I immediately, after the email glitch, sent another email 24 hours later, as soon as I realized what was going on, and said, hey, if you reached out to me pretty quickly after I sent that first email, please reconnect again. I had a problem, I had an issue, and I really want to connect with you. So please, if you would, please reconnect. I had several people respond to that. And I had folks who hadn't responded yet say, oh, yeah, hey, I didn't get a chance to respond to the email at first, but I'd love to chat. Let's talk about, what we can do together, whatever. Okay. And then on the calendar issues, I've still got a couple of those things where I'm having to fix them. I mean, one day, y'all, the calendar glitches just like erased a whole day of connection calls. And I was just like, what in the world? So as soon as they popped up, as soon as I realized that, reaching out to people saying, my apologies, my calendar glitch, I have no idea. I really want to get back on your calendar and let's schedule a chat. And I have several of those that I'm still following up on, right? But all I can do is be honest. Whether someone accepts that rationale, accepts the apology, I don't have any control over that. But I can be honest and I can be real about what's going on, because guess what? That's what's going on in our world every single day right now. These things are happening. So don't try to pretend like they're not, right? They're happening. So make sure to be real, be honest, and ultimately be you. This is where that authenticity piece really plays out, right? Be who you are. Now, if you've got some character flaws and you're a little snotty or whatever, then don't, we need to talk about that offline and about how to adjust that. But let's talk about being the best part of you. Let's talk about being you in an authentic way, being genuine for what that looks like for you, not trying to fake it, not trying to make yourself look better and or be, very, what's the word? Very, verbose and overcompensating because an issue came up or because something came along and you just failed to follow up with folks. Be authentic, be real about it, and to say, hey, I really want to reconnect. Please let me know what works for you, when we can make this happen. Okay. And remember that rejection is rarely about you. We all have our precious little egos. I have as well. And I've had a few moments where I'm like, well, really? They didn't do that? And I'm like, okay, fine. But just remember, a lot of times this is not about you. So either if you've put the invite or the offer out there and someone doesn't respond or someone doesn't respond well, you've done your part. Because a lot of times those people will come back, they will circle back around. Don't spin your wheels over it. Don't let the negative Nelly in your head keep replaying it. We'll talk about negative Nelly in a second, but move on, right? Be willing to move on and remember that rejection is rarely about you. It's often about things that are going on the other side that people have no idea of until they do get a chance to chat with you. Okay. Or you put it out there. All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the second strategy to overcoming your reconnection fears is to do it scared. It's just the bottom line. It's just what's got to happen sometimes. And so here's the thing. You have to take action. Even in spite of whatever's going on, whatever negativity you feel about it, whether you're feeling insufficient, whether you're not feeling worthy, or you're having some imposter syndrome thing going on, you still got to take action. If you don't take action, guess what? Nothing happens. And that seems very trite and redundant, yes? Because it is. If you don't take action, nothing happens. Right? Thank you, whoever's out there. I can't see who's out there. But yeah, if you don't take action, nothing happens. And so this is the thing that we have to remember. And we have to just kind of, I hate to say this because there's kind of that a little bit of a hustle behind it, which I don't want to. Hey, Janet, you don't want to necessarily want to say, but there's a little bit of like you kind of got kind of move past it, right? Not get over it, but move past it. Because in the action is when the momentum gets going, okay? And you start learning things. You start learning things about yourself. You start learning things about other people because you took the step, all right? Getting unstuck is a whole thing. Trust me, I understand. I know. I feel you. Getting unstuck from a situation is a thing. But in order to get unstuck, you have to take action. Tiny, tiny steps, baby steps, whatever kind of steps. But you have to take some type of step towards getting the result that you want. Okay. You got to quiet the negative Nelly, chatter in your head because negative Nelly is loud. She gets loud, y'all. And you got to tell her to be quiet. And sometimes maybe not quite so politely. Maybe we're not doing kindergarten. Please be quiet and use your inside voice. Sometimes you got to tell negative Nelly to shut up and go sit down, right? So you've got to remember that and be like, this is not where I am right now. So I'm going to need negative Nelly to go take a side chair, zip it, because I have things I need to do. And that includes reaching out to this group of people, reaching out to this person, because I have goals that I'm trying to achieve. And in re-engaging and engaging is a part of achieving those goals. All right. Remember, being told no or ignored is soul crushing. I understand that. We get like I just talked about, our egos get involved, we get our feelings hurt, but a lot of times it has nothing to do with us. So don't let that keep you from taking the action that you need to do. Do it anyway and be willing to grow because all of these things are growth opportunities. And when you review it and think of it in that way, it is so much more powerful, right? When you think of it in terms of it being a growth opportunity, how much more empowering is that? How much more uplifting is that? So let's look at it as a growth opportunity and take action accordingly, right? Because growth opportunities are not always perfect. They're not always going to go marching along in a perfect little, 1, 2, 3. and everything happen as they are. However, it still gives opportunities to experience things, to engage with people at new levels that will take you to the next level. Okay. So do it scared. Schedule the call, write the email, send the DM or the text, and do it scared. All right. Thirdly, our last thing is remember your why. I kind of hinted at it a little bit in that last section. But ultimately, if you want to overcome those reconnection fears that you have to get outside of everything that's going on externally and the negative Nelly that's going on and just sit and reflect on why you're doing this to begin with. Why do you have this goal? Why are you seeking to achieve this next level in your business, in your career? When you go back to your why and focus on it rather than why you think you're not worthy, why you think things are insufficient, or why you think someone is rejecting you, makes a totally different, like takes you to a totally different space. When you remember your why, that you want to make, for me, want to make an impact and have tremendous influence in your industry, in your world, to help empower people to take action, to be advocates for themselves, right? To engage with others at a high level so that I can then make sure that I leave a strong legacy behind for my own children and those that come behind. That's a whole other thing. Like that takes all of that stuff out, right? And that's a different level of engagement when you remember your why. You come from a different space. So I encourage you to do that. There's always a reason you're reaching out. Remember it as you engage and re-engage with others, right? Let your why be your inspiration. Let your why be your motivation for continuing, for being willing to be authentic and vulnerable, for being willing to take the action that needs to be taken, scared even. Let your why drive that and watch the magic happen. I love always talking about that. People are like, oh, that's so, hokey or whatever. But it really is magical when you see things and people come to fruition. I mean, one of my clients that I just finished working with, we just finished our sessions last week. Wonderful, wonderful person, love her to death. And to see the light go off and for her to share, these things, you help me see them. And so that even when negative Nelly shows up, or I'm like, I'm not sure about this, I remember why I start this to begin with, why I started this project, why I started this business. And remembering to keep it simple and to keep focus on it and for that to drive you forward in what it is you're doing, man, that is why I do what I do. Okay, that's the impact, that's the influence that I enjoy. And that is what will keep me putting things out here, continuing to do coffee chats when I'm not sure anyone's even showing up, right? Or continuing to reach out to people who may or may not respond. Because ultimately, when you start doing that, there's a flow, and I've talked about that often. There's a flow that begins, and you open up that little door, and that flow of action and activity begins, and it starts to go, and it starts to feed itself. And then you can be really excited when you watch that come to fruition. Okay? That is it for today, you all. So those are our 3 strategies for overcoming your reconnection fears. I would love, love, love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know how that resonates with you. And if you need time to get on the calendar and have a consultation chat, let me know, and we can get you set up on the calendar to talk a little bit more. All right. Take care. Have a fabulous, fabulous day. Bye-bye.